Israel and the tribulation period. The tribulation period is basically for Israel, because of Israel. Now we're in the middle of the tribulation period, and the middle to the very last is the worst part of it. If you go back to the 24th chapter of Matthew, I think it is, Matthew 24. Let's read this here. Let's go all the way back to verse number 1. Don't go back into the 23rd chapter, actually. Woe to you, scribes, Pharisees, and hypocrites, for you build the tombs of the prophets and adorn them, the monuments of the righteous, and say, if we had been living in the days of our fathers, we would not have been partners with them concerning the shedding of the blood of the prophets, but they're going to kill the Son of God, the King of Israel, more than a prophet. Consequently, you bear witness against yourself that you are sons of those who murdered the prophets, my prophets. Fill up then the measure of the guilt of your fathers. You serpents, you brood of vipers, you devils, sons of the devil is what he called them. How shall you escape the sentence of hell? These are very religious people he's talking to. Therefore, behold, I am sending you prophets and wise men and scribes, and some of them you will kill and crucify, and some of them you will scourge in your synagogues, and persecute them from city to city. And upon them will fall the guilt of the righteous blood shed upon the earth, the blood of the righteous Abel unto the blood of Zechariah, the son of Berechiah, whom you murdered between the temple and the altar. Truly I say to you, these things shall come upon this generation. He's talking about there's going to be the scattering of Israel right here. Ezekiel 36, 16 through 19. You bear witness against yourselves. O Jerusalem, who kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to you, how often I would have gathered your children together the way a mother hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you would not come. Behold, your house is being left to you desolate. For I say to you, from now on you shall not see me again until you say, blessed and holy is he that came in the name of the Lord. And by the way, that's being quoted from the Old Testament. 24 and verse number 1 now. And Jesus came from the temple and was going away, and his disciples came up to the point out of the temple and the buildings to him. And he answered and said to them, do you not see all these things? Truly I say to you, not one stone will be left upon another which will not be torn down. Now just as sure as that happened, you know, the temple was destroyed in 70 AD. Jesus was crucified about 33 and a half AD or so. Just as sure as that happened will be the tribulation period again brought upon Israel to bring them back. God didn't just destroy Israel here because of what they had done, but he sent them out to be corrected. It was not a capital crime that he accused them, even though it was, but a penal. You know, when you go to a penal colony, you are supposed to be corrected by hard living. Now the prisons have become into rest homes.
Yeah.
And he was sitting on the Mount of Olives. The disciples came to him and said, tell us, when will all these things become? And what will be the sign of your coming and the end of this church age? Jesus said unto them, See to it that no one leads you, no one misleads you. For many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and will mislead many. You know, still when we were meeting in our little multi-purpose room out in the cabin, I did several messages on the false messiahs that have come, the false Jewish messiahs. Many have come. But the Messiah that's going to come, the false Messiah that's going to come the last time, is going to come from a different place. And he's going to make a temporary covenant with them. You know, as I said in the last message, the Quran and the life of Muhammad by Ibn Ishaq tells about hudna. Hudna. You ever been hoodwinked?
Yeah.
Well, hudna is hoodwinking. And that's what's going to happen right over here in this tribulation period. Israel is going to be hoodwinked by this false prophet. And the Muslims call him Mahdi. He will be a direct descendant of Muhammad through his daughter. And he will have the heart, the soul of Muhammad in him. He'll be a real humble person in the beginning, and then he will become very, very powerful. They said he will come out of Syria. And another false prophet, Isa, and the beast will come out of Arabia. That's what their books say. Now, the Bible talks about this, except they're not good. Islam talks about their false Messiah, their Mahdi, he's good. And he's going to kill all the Jews and kill all the pigs. The innocent pigs. For many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and will mislead many. And you will be hearing of wars and rumors of wars, and see that you are not frightened. For these things must take place, but that is not yet the end. Boy, I'm going to tell you something. If you go all the way through the church age, we see a whole lot happen. We see the rise of Islam. We see the rise of Catholicism, which Islam basically copied. We see all the false religions down through the ages until we come to the end of the age. Nation will rise up against nation, kingdom against kingdom. In various places there will be famines and earthquakes. But all these things are merely the beginning of birth pains. They're just like when a woman starts having her first birth pains, her first contractions. Then they will deliver you to tribulation, and they'll kill you, and you will be hated of all nations on account of my name. And at the time many will fall away, and will betray one another, and hate one another. And many false prophets will arise, and will mislead many. This happened. I can guarantee you every pope that ever rose was a false prophet. Every leader of Islam was a false prophet. And because lawlessness is increased, most people's love will grow cold. But the one who endures to the end, he shall be saved. What are you talking about? The end of what? The end of the tribulation period? The end of the church age? Both, basically. If you get through the tribulation period, at the end of the tribulation period, you're going to be saved. Those that came down through the church age, and we've looked at the church history chart, they were saved. And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in the whole world for witness to all nations, and then the end shall come. Basically, you know what? The gospel has reached all nations. In the first 200 years, all of the Western and Eastern world, not Western, but the European and Eastern world had heard the gospel. They'd been into India, they'd been into Africa, they'd been into Egypt, they'd been all over. They'd been through Arabia. They'd preached the gospel. But then Islam followed suit and went behind and conquered and killed and slaughtered and murdered. As the Catholicism did, so did Islam. They conquered by the, they made converts by the sword. And therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation was spoken to Daniel, the prophet, standing in the holy place, let the reader understand. And now we go to the middle of the tribulation period. We're in the middle of the tribulation period. Now who's he talking to? He's talking to the nation Israel, national Israel now, not the church, but national Israel. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. This is the middle of the tribulation period. The temple has been built in Jerusalem. There has been a Hudna treaty. I think this Hudna treaty is between Islam and Israel. Now, when Muhammad went down to Mecca to worship from Medina, he was run out of Mecca and he went down into Medina. Then he basically killed everybody there that wouldn't surrender. In short, there's a whole lot more to it than that. There were several Jewish tribes down there, and they let him come in, and then, by the way, he turned against all of them. Then he took everything they had. Then he went back to Mecca, and they stopped him outside of Mecca, and they wouldn't let him go in. He had painted camels. They sacrificed camels and ate camels. They had all these camels shaved and painted and sacrificed, ready for sacrifice, and they wouldn't let him go back. Then he told him, he made a treaty. Well, okay, you can't come back this year, but you can come back next year, but you've got to behave yourself. Don't do anything wrong. Well, he went back, and his armies got stronger and stronger. He made a peace treaty with them, and he went back, and he worshipped, and then he came back the last time, and he conquered and murdered everyone that did not surrender. Any of his enemies there, they had a death sentence. And then he took over Mecca. He said, let those that are on the housetop flee. The Judea on the housetops flee. It's talking about Israel. It's not talking about church. It's talking about Israel. Let them flee to the mountains. And many Bible scholars believe this is to Petra. And by the way, Petra may have been actually mistaken for Mecca in Muhammad's writings. Because Mecca is nothing like Mecca. It's a desert area. Petra is like an oasis. It's in the desert, all right, but there were great big cisterns down there. It was like the commerce there was like what is written of in the Quran. By the way, in Mecca, there is no archaeological evidence that it goes back to the time of Abraham at all. Period. Zero. There is no archaeological evidence at all that it goes back there. There is no archaeological evidence around there that it goes back any further than 600 or 700, 800 AD. Let them, those who are in Judea, flee to the mountains, and let them who are in the housetop not go down and get the things that are in the house. Don't go down in the house. Jump off the housetop and take off running. You don't have time. When you see the abomination, desolation, when you see this false prophet say there and say that he is God, run. Leave. This temple that they're going to build is the temple of all nations. There's a church of all nations over there right now on the Mount of Olives. But this is the Hudna treaty, the treaty that gives them peace, but until Islam becomes very strong, and then they attack, like they did in Mecca, like they did in Medina. And let him who is in the field not turn back to the cloak. But woe to those who are with child and those who are nursed babies in those days. But pray that your flight may not be in winter or on the Sabbath. They can't travel on Sabbath, you know. They're still Jews. This is Jews. This isn't talking about Christians. Well, then there will be a great tribulation. This period of time right here from there to the middle of the tribulation period now is called the Tribulation the Great. Such as has not been occurred since the beginning of the world, nor until now, nor ever will be, or shall be ever again. And unless those days be cut off short, no life shall have been saved. But for the sake of the elect. Who is the elect here? Israel. Those days shall be cut short. That if anyone says to you, behold, here is the Christ, or there he is, do not believe him. For false Christs and false prophets will arise and will show great signs and wonders, so as to mislead, if possible, even the elect. That's Israel again. Behold, I have told you so in advance. He's talking to the church there, but he's talking about Jews. This is for Jews here. This is for Israel. Behold, he is in the wilderness, do not go forth. Behold, he is in the inner room, do not believe them. For just as the lightning comes from the east and flashes even to the west, so shall be the coming of the Son of Man be. Wherever the corpse is, there the gut buzzards will gather. But immediately after the tribulation period of those days, the sun shall be darkened, and the moon shall not give its light, and the stars will fall from the sky, and the answers of the heavens will be shaken. And then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky. This is at the end of the tribulation period. This is when Jesus, when he comes at the tribulation period, the world's not going to see him. He's going to come for his own. His own see him. But now he's coming to the world. At the end of the tribulation period, he's going to come up and set up his kingdom. The millennial reign for Israel. Israel will be back as administrator of God's kingdom on earth, while his church is reigning with him in heaven in New Jerusalem. New Jerusalem. The Son of Man will appear in the sky, and all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds with power and great glory. This is not the secret coming. This is not the parousia coming. This is the violently powerful coming. He will send forth his angels with a great trumpet. They will gather together the elect from four winds, from under the sky to the other. And now learn the parable of the fig tree. When its branches have already become tender and it puts forth its leaves, you know that summer is near. Now in the Bakersfield area, down there in the San Joaquin area, how do you tell the spring is near, Marilyn? How do you tell spring is near in San Joaquin Valley?
Almond trees.
Almond trees bloom. Even so, when you see all these things and recognize that he is near, right at the door. Isaiah 5, 1 through 9. Today, truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until these things take place. That generation right there. But as for the day and the hour, no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but the Father alone. For the coming of the Son of Man will be just like the days of Noah. Remember I told you what happened in the days of Noah? Noah built the ark. The church preached the gospel throughout the church, throughout the church age. The end of the church age is going to be like the days of Noah. They were eating, they were drinking, they were doing all their normal things they do in life. All of a sudden, the door shut. The last person saved in the church age. Noah had built the ark. However long it took him to build, within 120 years he had it built. God's going to send a flood after 120 years. He wasn't going to put up with man no longer than that. Noah, God ushered him into the ark. God shut the door, and then God sent tribulation. The tribulation is that they had three sources of water. They had rain, which they'd never seen, and lightning and thunder. They had the great springs of the deep, the Pegay of the deep, and then the earth was surrounded by ocean, by a big ocean, completely a bubble of an ocean. And it says the floodgates of heaven were opened. So we had rain, which they never saw before. The floodgates of heaven were poured down to earth, and then the springs of the deep keep coming. Artesian wells, springs, rivers, creeks. The floodgates of heaven and rain. And for 40 days and nights it didn't cease. And then water was on the earth for months until God dried up the land. When the Lord sends forth His Son to gather up the church and all the saved, things are going to happen on the earth that they've never known before. People are going to be afraid. What happened to all my friends and things over here? What happened? Where'd they all go? They're gone overnight. The graves, the graveyards, the cities, the necropolis, the cities of the dead are opened up. All the saved, not every grave will be opened up, but the grave of the saved will be opened up. Where do they all go? What happened? They'll start looking at the Bible. I remember the series of movies Left Behind, and there were people there that, some of them were church members. You know, there's going to be, when the rapture comes, there's going to be a lot of churches that still have members of the church still here. They're not saved. Never were. They just went to church. They'll still be here. They've heard the gospel before, maybe. In some churches today, you're going to have trouble hearing that. It'll always make you feel better, like Joel Osteen or Reverend Dyke or somebody. Churches will have service after the rapture for a while anyway, until all churches are condemned. Many, many people will be dying during this time. When the tribulation of the great comes for that last 3.5 years, the earth is not going to be habitable anymore. There's going to be so much pollution. They talk about pollution. They're talking about the earth is going to burn up. You know, it's going to be hotter and hotter, global warming and all this. The tribulation period, man, forget about global warming. It's going to be hell on earth. There's going to be terrible, you know, when a volcano erupts, it completely disturbs the weather, doesn't it? Remember what happened when Mount St. Helens blew up? The years of real cold winters after that? Mm-hmm. Well, Yosemite may blow up. Mammoth may blow up here and totally change the earth. Wars change the earth. Wars change the weather patterns. The Napoleonic Wars, the Roman Wars, even the Persian Wars, all of those wars through the history, the American Revolution, all the wars through Germany and history, Russia, all of that. All of those changed the weather to some extent because they polluted the world. I can't even imagine how the seas are even still have fish in them from World War I and World War II. All those ships they sunk out there, all of that oil all over the waters and fuel, gunpowder, all of this. You know, the rainmakers used to come. Remember the rainmakers? You know, I lived at a time where all this stuff was still happening. You ever hear of the rainmakers in your day, Larry?
I've heard of rainmakers, but I've never seen one.
How about Maryland? Do you remember them?
I remember.
Yeah, you remember. They were still coming around the areas that didn't. And what would they do? They'd go out there and they'd shoot off cannons and do all kinds of stuff. They'd pollute the air, and so the clouds, if there are clouds up there, they'd seed the clouds, and it would rain. Well, yeah, man does pollute the earth, and wars pollute the earth terribly. A whole lot more than an automobile. Forest fires pollute. All of this. When the American Indian cleared the Great Plains and created the Great Plains and burned all that brush and trees out there where they made the Great Plains, they called the mini ice age in Europe. Remember, when I was young, the big thing that science deal was is the earth is going to freeze to death because the sun's going to quit shining. That was a big deal back then. Don't worry about any of that. Worry about the tribulation period. That's going to be the worst polluting situation in the world. People won't be able to breathe. They won't have water to drink. Nothing at all. terrible times. Our Father, we send this message out for your honor, Lord. Please touch people's lives with it. Please use it wherever it goes. Bring people to salvation and to service both. Please touch every life out there with your word, that they might see what's in it. And as a message to us, for us today, forevermore. Father, please forgive me where I failed you. In Jesus' name I pray.